look at that. Ooh, this looks beautiful. Welcome to Elizabeth Eats. Today we are making shakshuka. Shakshuka is a North African baked egg dish. This is my take on shakshuka in an American kitchen with ingredients that I can get at an American grocery store. I love shakshuka because it is full of veggies. It's very healthy. It's actually quite easy to make and it is so delicious. So if you've never made one before, the only thing that seems a little intimidating is cracking the eggs into the tomato sauce, but it's actually very easy. You can use this dish as meal prep. You can use this dish to eat the day of, and it actually surprisingly stores really well. My stepdaughter took it the next day and made herself an egg sandwich based on just what was in the refrigerator. So it's great for meal prep. It's also beautiful enough to use for entertaining. So we made this for Father's Day this year. My husband loved it, and I love it because I usually have all of these ingredients in my kitchen. So we'll start by preheating the oven. All right, to start our shakshuka, I need an onion. This is a pretty large onion, so I'm gonna use half of this yellow onion. You could use a white onion or a red onion. I like yellow. So we essentially make a tomato sauce, and then we crack whole eggs into the tomato sauce, bake the eggs. If you like your egg yolks a little runny or jammy, you can do that. If you like yours set all the way through, you can do that too. And I like to finish a shakshuka with herbs and lemon zest. It makes it absolutely wonderful. All right, most of you know this, but if you don't, to chop an onion, get your hand flat, go through it a couple times going this way. The root end is still intact, and then slice down the side. The thing about cooking anything is you want everything to be about the same size of the ingredients that you're using. So I don't want some huge pieces of onion and some small pieces of onion because then they cook differently. So the point of cutting an onion like this is that all of the pieces end up being about the same size. And then I pulled it. Always keep your fingers back, and then I slice right down the center. And just like with any recipe that I teach you, this is my take on shakshuka. So if you want to add some other veggies, I've seen people add mushrooms to this. You can really add anything you want here and make it your own. I'm going to use one red bell pepper. I've made this without the bell pepper before. We had some friends over who bell pepper did not agree with someone, so I made it without, and it's still absolutely delicious. So you can kind of choose what you want there. Everyone chops a red bell pepper differently. The white pithy part is a little bitter, so I try to avoid that. And I like to chop the bell pepper about the same size as the onion. All of these ingredients are full of vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, fiber. But like I said earlier, if something doesn't agree with you, just leave it out. You can make any recipe your own at home. Don't worry about making it perfect. Nothing in any kitchen is perfect. I'm gonna slice the garlic. If you press or grate the garlic, sometimes I find it burns a little too easily because garlic does burn quite easily. Let's get the skins off. So I love shakshuka because you can serve it for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. I think it was traditionally more of a dinner dish that then became a breakfast dish, but it's also great for dinner. So you can choose your own adventure of when you want to serve this, when you want to eat it. I'm just gonna slice this garlic thin, pretty thin. I still use this little end piece with the root. The garlic root is tender, it's small. I don't think anyone's ever gonna notice it. If it bothers you, put it in the compost. We're gonna saute the peppers and onions for like 5 to 6 minutes till they really start to get soft. Add the garlic and some paprika and cumin to let that cook a little bit in the oil as well. And then we're going to add one 28-ounce can of crushed tomatoes. Yes, you can use fresh tomatoes. I would use about 1 pound to 1.5 pounds if I did. I think the crushed tomatoes in the can work really fantastic here. I always try to buy San Marzano tomatoes. It's a variety of tomatoes. It's a little bit sweeter, a little less acidic. I do think they taste better. However, they cost a little bit more money. It's about $1 more usually, sometimes $2 more. So use whatever works for you. San Marzano is always my choice. You need one 28-ounce can. These are crushed tomatoes. If you have whole peeled tomatoes, you can just crush them with your hands as you put them into the saute pan. And one thing I will mention, if you're not using San Marzano tomatoes, sometimes canned tomatoes can just be super acidic and a little bit too punchy. You can add a teaspoon of honey to any recipe that you're making if you're not using San Marzano tomatoes, and it will kind of balance out the acidity of the tomatoes. Let's get these veggies into the pan cooking and we will get started on our shakshuka recipe. All right, let's preheat a 12-inch skillet over medium heat and a couple of tablespoons of olive oil, about 2. I'm doing the onions and the peppers first. because the garlic only needs about 30 seconds to a minute. It does not need as much time as the rest of your veggies. Now this just needs to saute 5 to 7 minutes. Let's add a little bit of ground pepper and a little bit of salt because the salt will help sweat the onions a little bit. Now we just need a couple minutes for this to cook. Our onions are nice and translucent, so let's add our garlic to the pan. Stir that in a little bit, and we're gonna add some spices. Now you can add whatever spices you want to this. I'm gonna do a teaspoon of paprika and a teaspoon of ground cumin. Both are delicious and add wonderful flavor to this. 1 teaspoon of ground cumin. And it's better to add the spices before we add the tomato sauce because we want the spices to cook a little bit in the oil. It actually brings out more of the flavor in the spices if you cook it in the oil a little bit. So a teaspoon of the ground cumin, a teaspoon of the paprika, and if your pan looks dry, you can add a touch more oil just to get everything nice and sizzly. So let that go for about 30 seconds and we are going to add our crushed tomatoes. Don't wear your favorite sweater or your favorite clothes when you do this. Hopefully it doesn't spill back too much. Get that all nice and mixed together. There's a little bit of waiting in shakshuka. Now we have to let this cook for about 10 or 15 minutes just to let that raw tomato flavor from the canned tomatoes cook out a little bit. That is really the most of the work with shakshuka. In a few minutes, we will crack the eggs into this, pop it in the oven, and we're gonna have an incredible baked egg dish. I love this dish so much. Oh, I wanna mention, if you're going to put this in the oven, you wanna make sure you're using an oven-safe skillet. So I know my skillet can go in the oven. If you are using something that has a rubber handle, it cannot go in the oven. You'll have to use the lid method, but I'll show you both methods. You'll be able to do this with whatever skillet you have. I have this on low, medium low to low. You just want little simmer bubbles here. And I'm also gonna add some salt. Always adjust your salt to taste. Now that this has been simmering for about 10 to 15 minutes, I'm going to grab my eggs and I'm gonna make just like a little well like this and crack each egg into a little ramekin first, I'll show you that, and then put the egg in the little well. Got a little dish here. Now the dish just helps a more positive chance that your yolk's not going to break. So you can, if you're brave, just crack it straight in, but I like to crack it into one of these first. Also helps you make sure you can fish a shell out easier if you get an eggshell in there. So I've got my egg and then just gently pour that right in. The egg white will spread a little bit and that's okay. So I'm just gonna do this with all 7. I could fit 8 in here, up to 10. Let's make a little well. Maple's joining us. For those of you who are new around here, this is Maple. She's my golden retriever. She loves to just see what's happening all the time. All right, I've got my eggs in. Beautiful. Doesn't look as appealing when it's in this state. Do a small, very small sprinkle of salt on top of each egg, just because these eggs don't have any salt in them yet. Now, I'm gonna put this whole thing into the oven for about 7 minutes. And you'll wanna check it through. You wanna wait until the egg whites are completely set, and then I like the yolks a little bit runny, but you can decide if you want your yolks runny or if you want your yolks fully cooked through. So if you don't wanna put this in the oven, you can actually just put this on low to medium low heat, grab a lid. This is like a universal lid. It can go on any pan. You can see through it, so I love it. And then you can monitor it here. This traps the heat in so that the eggs will cook through. This is totally an acceptable way to do it too. I've just always put it in the oven, so I like to do it that way. This is the only part that can make me nervous, is getting this into the oven without spilling it. So be careful, obviously an oven's hot. Alexa, set a timer for 5 minutes. All right, let's take this out. It looks beautiful. Look at that. And it goes without saying, this is very hot. So be very careful. Look at that. Woo! It's so pretty. This is hot, so of course, always be careful when you have something hot. Look at that. This looks beautiful. It is perfectly done. I got the eggs a little set. That's okay. Some of them are, yep, that one's runny. They're just jammy and perfect. I know this is a little frustrating if you are just starting to make this for the first time, but every oven is different. My oven is very efficient. It was built in France. It cooks pretty quickly. Most ovens at 350, you're gonna want 5 to 7 minutes, and always pull it a little early. See how jammy this one is? Because this whole thing is hot, it's gonna continue to cook a little bit, so it's okay to pull a little early. I love to add chives. A chive plant is probably the easiest herb plant you can grow. Honestly, one of the least expensive ways to add really good flavor to your food because they will just keep growing. Basil's a little difficult to grow. Cilantro needs to grow from seed, but chives will give you food for a long time. All right, I've got my chives. I've got some basil leaves, and then cilantro. I just rinsed this. When you bring cilantro home from the store, I've said this so many times, put some water in a jar or small cup, rinse it, chop off the ends, and put it in the water. I put it in the refrigerator like that. If you do that, your cilantro will stay good. I've had it for weeks sometimes. It depends on how old it was at the store, but it is a way better method than keeping it in the bag. We all know it goes bad within a few days. It turns brown, and no one wants to be pulling brown cilantro out of the refrigerator. So I'm just gonna do a little bit of cilantro. 3 herbs is pretty fancy. It's kind of use whatever you have at your house. We made this for Father's Day. We wanted to go extra fancy with it. So I've got my cilantro and then basil. I've washed these 2 basil leaves. I'm just going to roll them up. It's called a chiffonade. Doesn't matter what it's called. It just looks pretty. Roll it up and then slice it. And it just makes a really pretty presentation. Look at that. It's pretty little pieces of basil. All right. And the only other 2 things I'm going to add, because we're making our shakshuka really fancy today, is some lemon zest and a little bit of lemon juice. My husband actually taught me this. So shakshuka is from Northern Africa. It's also very popular in the Middle East. His mother is Middle Eastern and his father is Pakistani. So I've learned a lot from them about cooking, but just a little bit of lemon zest on top. Keep rolling your lemon. You don't want the white pithy part is very bitter. You just want that outer yellow part. Just a little bit adds absolutely incredible flavor. And then just a little bit of lemon juice. We don't want to make it runny, but we just want a tiny bit of lemon juice on top. This kind of makes it, you'll take it from really good to like, wow, this tastes like it came from a restaurant. I'm gonna put my herbs on. So let me do the chives. So pretty. Even if I just had chives, that's all I would use here. If you have parsley, some people use parsley, some people use just cilantro. You get to use whatever works for you. A little bit of basil. If you have leftover herbs, put them in the refrigerator for a few days, put them in other egg dishes or something else that you're cooking that week. You can make this completely dairy-free. Eggs are actually not dairy. They're a protein. You don't have to put cheese on this if you want to. A fresh feta is really nice. Goat cheese is really nice. I like to use real Parmesan. It's actually very low in lactose, almost lactose-free because of the way it's made and fermented. So some nutritionists even say that Parmesan is a health food. I think it just tastes delicious. So I like to put it a little bit on the top. Look at that. That is a perfect meal. You could toast up some bread if you wanted to. I'm gonna serve it just like this. I love just the egg and the tomato together. You can do a little bit of sauce in the bottom. Get your egg. Look at that. Ooh, like I said, some toast. My stepdaughter turned hers into an egg sandwich the next day. You can portion this out. If you have people over, there's not going to be any left. But if you make this for yourself and you want a meal prep, this is hot. I'm gonna take a bite of it though. Oh my God, it's good. This is so good. It's healthy, it's delicious. I'm wondering why I don't make this every week. I make it like maybe once a month, but I'm gonna start making it every week. Thanks for being here for a few minutes with me. If you like this episode, please like and subscribe to the channel. That actually is the best way to support the channel so we can keep making more episodes. Thanks for being here. I'll see you next week.